Gents, let's focus now on another topic this week on PST. Which managers are properly on the hot seat and who will go next in the Premier League? I mean, a lot of Premier League owners are getting quite nervous now, Andy. I mean, we saw Leicester City, a lot of talk around them and Brendan Rodgers. Is he going to get fired? Then his players come out and put in that incredible display to get their first win of the season, smash Nottingham Forest 4-0 on an East Midlands derby. Is that bought Brendan Rodgers maybe up until the World Cup break to see how they do? Bought him more time? Do you think longer term he still is the right option? Because there is a lot of doubts creeping in there, it would seem, but they are a quality team. So maybe that one result has bought Rodgers a bit more time. And I'd argue he's deserved that after the last few seasons, but these things can unravel pretty quickly, can't they?
Yeah, it would have been too quick for Brendan Rodgers to go right now. I think that game obviously bought him a little bit more time. I don't know that it bought him a ton more time, though, because I don't know that it's going to necessarily be followed by another comfortable big blowout win, by another big comfortable blowout win. They could have been a goal or two down early in that game against Forest. A couple of missed chances, one off the post. They got really, really lucky. They scored 3 times in 10 minutes. And obviously the game is over from that point. And so there were still some worrying signs defensively, especially the way that Forest, who are kind of struggling, I think, to get that team of 22, 23 new signings in the summer to gel together and function as a unit. They had some success early on in that game. And if the ball hits the back of the net, the game goes very differently. And we're talking probably very differently about Brendan Rodgers and Leicester right now. Obviously they didn't. So it's a bit of a moot point. But that defensive weakness was still very obvious up until the point that they blew them away with those 3 goals. So I don't know that things are necessarily fixed. It was nice to see James Maddison, put in a star-like performance to get something from Harvey Barnes. Jamie Vardy could have scored a hat trick in the first half as well, I suppose you could say, if we're talking about what ifs. Patson Daka getting a goal is obviously a good sign for them. But defensively, 22 goals in their first 7 games they gave up. That was their first clean sheet of the season. I don't know. That's going to be a challenge, I think, for most of the season.
Nick, what do you think about Leicester? Because I think Brendan Rodgers, wherever he's gone, there's kind of a perception of him that after a few seasons, things start to fizzle out. Maybe his message is just, I don't want to say tiresome, but he's quite an intense coach, isn't he? And demands a lot. So after a few seasons with the same group of players, it seems like Leicester, if they do stick with Rodgers, are going to have to rejuvenate this team quite a lot. And obviously this summer, they didn't have the transfer funds to be able to do that and back him, and they could lose a lot of big players. So do you think he's just waiting for them to fire him and say, look, it's not really my fault here. This is not my doing. I'm not going to ruin my reputation. I'm going to hang out and just see what happens this season? Or do you think for him it's a difficult situation, right? They get dragged into a relegation battle and potentially go down. He doesn't want that on his CV either. So it's kind of a power struggle there between the Leicester owner and Brendan Rodgers to see who buckles first. But this result surely does buy him a bit more time.
It does. I've grown in sort of respect for him. Been a roller coaster ride with Rodgers over his career because he started. How could you not admire some of the things he did early in his career? And then the Liverpool thing, listen, we've learned from what Jurgen Klopp had to do to clean up that, and that Brendan Rodgers tried to do to clean up that, right? Like this was a long-standing issue at Liverpool that needed to be fixed to put them on the right track. What he did at Celtic was incredibly impressive. And the way he has really held himself in really good class with he hasn't put this on the owners. He knew they couldn't spend. He's admitted it publicly, but in a way where he says, yeah, but I get it. I don't think he was expecting Fofana to go, but ultimately they didn't really have a choice the way that bid came in and the player wanted to go. So I guess I'm kind of rooting for him. And if he hasn't lost the room, the one thing that's opened my eyes on managers these days is I wouldn't have said that Thomas Tuchel would be going anywhere until I read that article about what Chelsea was like this summer. And you realize if everything's fine behind the scenes, relatively speaking, it's going to be hard to find another Brendan Rodgers at Leicester. And so I think he's earned himself some time, and he may have earned himself a lot more time just by not putting the entire club on blast and looking out for himself for the last 2 months.
Yeah, there's a lot to admire about Brendan Rodgers, so I hope he turns it around. And after winning the FA Cup, 5th place finishes back-to-back, obviously what they've done in Europe, I think he deserves a bit more time, at least for me, until after the World Cup, and then being able to hopefully bring in a few new players in January for him to get them moving up the league. Obviously, the team they beat, Nottingham Forest, moved to the bottom of the table. Andy, there's a lot of talk about Steve Cooper potentially losing his job, even though he worked wonders to turn Nottingham Forest from a team in trouble and relegation battle in the Championship, moved them all the way up the top, got them promoted back to the Premier League, to the Promised Land, and basically has been given a whole new squad to work with over a few month period and say, oh, now you have to mold them into a team that can compete in the Premier League. I mean, we've seen it a lot with newly promoted teams, but this is probably the most extreme version we've ever seen of buying new players and just getting rid of a lot of the players that got you promotion to the Premier League in the first place. So it feels like he deserves more time. He's done a lot of good work with young players during his managerial career before this, but we've got Sean Dyche being linked. We have Rafael Benitez being linked. And it feels like Steve Cooper is just one bad result away right now from being fired by Forest, which I think it'll be a huge shame, but we kind of expect it, right, with the ownership and the way they're trying to run that club.
But we shouldn't expect it. Like, it would be categorically insane to fire him right now. He's barely been there a year. 2, in that first year, he got you promoted to the Premier League for the first time in 30 some years. And then you're going to give him 8 or 9 or 10 games. And if it's not perfect right away at the highest level of the sport, remember, you're newly promoted. And also, to your point, all of those new players, what he did last season with a completely different squad, and then you go up to the highest level of competition and say, here's an entirely new, different team. Now do it again. That is insane to expect. They might not stay up if they keep Steve Cooper all season. There is a very good chance they go down with him. But if they fire him, they will absolutely not stay up this season. He seems to be the one kind of, not just the one hope, but I think the one kind of the piece of the puzzle that I think connects a lot of things at that club. The way that the fans have really taken to him, the way that the players last season really enjoyed playing for him. You would think that this group of players, if they're able to have some success and take his ideas on board a little bit more, that they will feel similar. Like, he just feels like the perfect person to be in charge of that club right now. And if you've got him and you fire him to then get relegated, you're then probably firing whoever you bring in this season to replace him, get another manager during the championship next season to then have to blow that squad up of all those players that want to leave. It's just an incredibly disastrous situation waiting to happen. Or you could just not do that.
Yeah, I mean, Andy, you texted us last night during the game and just saying Forest looked like a team that's never played together, and they haven't, right? I mean, every single game they roll out new formations, new players playing next to each other. There's so many new signings there that are only just finding their feet. It seems really crazy because Cooper's a really good coach. His teams play attractive football, but surely has to be getting a bit more time. But if not, obviously Sean Dyche and Benitez a lot more pragmatic approaches in terms of their coaching style. They're apparently being lined up. So let's see what Nottingham Forest do. Wolves, obviously, fine at Bruno Lage. Who's coming in now? I mean, there's some, predictably, a lot of Portuguese coaches that are being lined up and a lot of coaches that have links to Mendes, who obviously has a huge influence when it comes to the goings-on at Wolves. We're talking about Amorim, who's done a great job at Sporting Lisbon, Julian Lopetegui, who's done a great job at Sevilla, but they've had a tough start to the season, Pedro Martins, who's been at Olympiacos in recent years, Andre Villas-Boas, and then Sean Dyche's name is popping up again for Wolves as a slightly different approach.
Slightly.
Yeah, slightly. What do you think about Wolves? Because they are a team that they're just a goal scorer away from being a very solid mid-table Premier League team, but they've had struggles for a long, long time now. They have to get this appointment right, don't they? Because they have players there on huge wages, a lot of big players, and they just have to get this appointment right. I mean, who do you think's the best person to come in and replace Lage?
Well, first of all, it can't be Sean Dyche because I'm casting him in the opposite world version of Ted Lasso, where he comes to American soccer and just loses his mind for a straight year. I'll tell you who the right move is if he's willing to do it. And I know you're all going to roll your eyes, but this is not going to happen. I promise you. Pochettino would be perfect here. Pochettino would fix Wolves. Ruben Neves, I mean, he loves it. And there's so many pieces here, a couple of good young defenders. Ryan Aït-Nouri could use a guy who, I mean, if you look at the advanced stats from last year, he's a player who was rumored by Man City. I really think all the pieces are here for for a manager like that with renown to come in and kind of steady the ship. I just don't know if he's ducking out of the championship. In the meantime, I really don't know. I think when Wolves came out and said, Bruno Lage has done a pretty good job, we just kind of have to do this because we have to. And I think he'll succeed elsewhere. That was a red flag for me. The guy's really good, but I think he's going to do great somewhere else. And we just need to change for change sakes. Nah.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of changes, I think. It's going to be really intriguing to see if teams now change before the World Cup break so they can give managers time over a 6-week period to work with the players they have there, get their philosophy bed in, and then almost the restart of the season, right, on Boxing Day when the Premier League begins. I mean, I'm looking at Southampton as well, Ralph Hasenhuttl. There's a lot of pressure on him. They brought in a lot of young players, spent a lot of money this summer. Everything else has changed there. His coaching team has all changed. A lot of the players have. Very young team. I like him as a character, and only Guardiola and Klopp have been around in the Premier League longer with their current teams than Hasenhuttl, which is pretty crazy considering all the ups and downs that he's had. But it feels like Southampton now, with their new ownership coming in last January, I feel like they might make a change there as well. So a lot going on in the Premier League. We'll keep you updated on Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com. All the latest hot seat news, who's on it, who could go, and who's coming in. There's a lot of managerial chopping and changing going on right now. And I feel like, lads, it's going to get pretty volatile in the weeks and months to come.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. For even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you over there.